Hello and welcome back to Learning New Testament Greek. Today we're going to talk about accents and punctuation marks. Alright, accents. Accents are markings that'll let us know which syllable to put the emphasis on. There are three types of accents. Well, they actually did other things, but we'll talk about that as we get into them. We have three accents. I'm going to take a letter. I'm going to take the letter alpha. I'm just going to draw a couple alphas here. Alpha. Alpha, and alpha. Now, accents. You have three accents. One is the acute accent. It's called that because it's prettier than the others. No, I'm kidding. The acute accent is just looks like a little mark, like that. That is an acute accent. Next, you have a grave accent. Grave is a backwards acute. Then the third type of accent you have is called a circumflex. Circumflex. And it almost looks like a fermata. It's just a little arch above a letter. Now, how we're going to use these accents is these accents tell you which syllable of the word to put the emphasis on, because you don't want to be putting the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable. So these accents are going to help us. Much like in English today, you don't accent your words. The ancient Greeks usually didn't accent theirs. So if you delve into the ancient text, you won't find a lot of accents, but we use them to help us because we don't speak Greek natively. Anyway, the acute. Now, you're saying, well, all these do is just show us what syllable emphasis. Why do we have three different marks? Well, because they show up in different situations. The acute can be put on basically anything. The grave is usually found on the ultima of a word. The ultima is a fancy way to say the last syllable. So it's usually found on the last syllable of certain words that end in certain ways, and it gets a little hairy. But there's information, lots of information, if you want to look up why each of these, or where and how each of these accents show up. Circumflex can only go on a long vowel. But because we're focusing on reading and not writing words, we aren't going to spend an awful lot of time on why and how and when to use which accent. Or right now, I just want you to know that these are the three accents. Now, originally, they probably had something to do with tone. There's some people who speculate that the acute would have had you tone up when you said a word, or the grave would tone down, or the circumflex would have you kind of do a type sound. But I haven't done a lot of personal study on that, so I can't verify or deny it. But just know you have three accents. You have the acute, you have the grave, and you have the circumflex. Now, when you see these marks above a vowel, the syllable that's attached to that vowel will be the tonal syllable, the tone syllable, the syllable that gets the accent, or the emphasis of it. But we'll talk about that once you get to seeing examples of real Greek words, then it should become a little more clear. But for now, just know you have an acute, a grave, and a circumflex accent. Now, to move on to punctuation marks. Punctuation marks. We use them in English, or actually we should use them in English. I'm afraid they're dying out with the advent of text and all that good stuff. But they generally dictate the flow of a sentence, or thoughts come in and things of that nature. I'm going to use a squiggly line here to represent a sentence. This is a sentence. More specifically, this is a Greek sentence. Now, when you come to an end of an English sentence, what do? Well, you start a new one, okay. But you add a period. Or I believe the English call it a full stop. I'm going to use the term period because that's what we call it in Greek. The Greeks use a period, and it looks just like our period and functions just like our period. It's telling you, hey, this is the end of a sentence. Now, to note that the ancient Greek writers and authors didn't use a lot of punctuation. I believe they did a little, but most of the punctuation, if you were to pick up your Greek Bible and look in it, most of the punctuation was added by English speakers to help us to determine where thoughts were. But we'll get into all that later. So you have a period. It ends a sentence. Next up, we'll have our second sentence here, except this sentence has two clauses. And what usually do we do to break up thoughts, ideas, and things of that nature? We add a comma. And so I'm trying to emphasize that there, but usually it's just like one of those little numbers, the comma. And Greek commas function just like English commas. You'll find them in list and breaking up of clauses and thoughts and ideas, things of that nature. So if you should put a comma in an English spot, there probably should be one in a similar Greek construction. It works just the same. You don't have to... These two are the same thing as in English. It's easy peasy, easy pickings. Now for one that's a little different. It functions the same, but it looks funny. So let's say you have a question. This isn't a sentence, this is a question. What comes at the end of a question? Well, a question mark does, right? Well, that is an English question mark. You want to use the Greek question mark, which doesn't look like that at all. It looks like that. That is the Greek question mark. Yes, I know it looks like a semicolon, but that is a question mark. Question mark. Question mark one word? It's irrelevant right now. But the Greek question mark looks like an English semicolon. Next up, we have a colon. So you have colons. You don't see them an awful lot in modern English, like a subtitle of a book, something like that. But the colon is just a dot in the middle. It's a colon. So colon is just a dot in the middle. Question mark looks like a semicolon. That's not our example anymore. Comma looks the same as in English. Period looks the same as in English. So you got the same thing. So you have period, comma, question mark, colon. Those are the big accent marks. These are the ones you need to know. As you'll be reading along, and you'll be reading along, and then you'll see this mark. Then you'll see the answer and think, wow, this sentence looks strange. That shouldn't be a semicolon. Well, it's not. This is a question mark. So this was probably the question. And this is an answer of some sort. Or carrying on the story or whatever it was. So you need to know your markings, otherwise you're going to get a little confused. Alright, there are two more marks I want to show you before we call it a day. The first is the apostrophe. And it looks just like an apostrophe. Like an English apostrophe. Contractions. Apostrophes are used in contractions, like our English word can't. Well, those should probably be two English words, cannot. But it shows you that a letter is dropped out, or is deleted. So, cannot. The apostrophe shows that you've lost some letters. And it's a visual cue to say these letters have contracted. In Greek, you'll find an awful lot of the same thing. For example, the word Allah. And it begins with a vowel, so what does it need? That's right, it needs a breathing mark. And Allah uses a smooth breathing mark. Allah. Well, no, this isn't the name of the Islamic god. Allah is a conjunction, adversative conjunction. It's like the word but. We'll get into it later. It's a little different. Actually, it's kind of neat. But we'll talk about that later. That's not the reason I'm bringing this up. Sometimes, under certain circumstances, this final alpha drops out. And when it does, and the printers will often put a apostrophe at the end to let you know, hey, a letter's fallen out, and this isn't all. Don't look in your words list, your lexicon, dictionaries. Don't look up all, because the letters dropped out. It's just a helpful tool to let you know that some sort of contraction or elision or something of that nature. Elision's a fancy word to means a letter dropped out, or deleted. And just let you know there used to be a letter there, but there's not one anymore. Alright, so if you got it, you got your three accents, acute, grave, and circumflex, and you have your punctuation marks, period, comma, question mark, colon, and then you also have your apostrophe. Oh, before I go, one more, the diaresis. Diaresis. I believe that's how you pronounce it. And it looks like 2 dots. Diaresis, all it does is it breaks up a diphthong. Like if you had the diphthong I, put a diaresis over it, this is no longer a diphthong, but it is 2 vowels. That's all the diphthong does. You aren't going to see it very often. I believe in some foreign names, things like that. It's not real common, but it's good to know what it's doing, otherwise you'll get confused. Sorry, now you got it. You got your accents. And you have your punctuation. And you also have your apostrophe and your diaresis. Good to go? Next time we'll look at some examples, and hopefully all this will start to come together and you'll be able to see it a little more clearly. Alright, I'll catch you next time.